We're going to talk about the things you should never sacrifice for anyone, no matter what. These aren't just nice-to-haves. They're the foundation of who you are. Because if you're always bending, giving, and compromising, at what point do you lose yourself? Let's dive in and find out what you should be holding on to no matter who comes into your life. By the way, I just launched a brand new, completely free newsletter. Sign up with your email, and I'll send you weekly valuable insights, tips, and exclusive content straight to your inbox. It's the perfect way to stay inspired and connected. Link is in the description. Don't miss out. 1. Your self-respect. Your self-respect is the core of your identity, something you should fiercely guard. When you compromise your self-respect just to keep the peace or please someone else, you're handing over the steering wheel of your life. People start to test the limits. They push boundaries, slowly eroding what you hold sacred, bit by bit, until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize yourself. You might find yourself doubting your own worth, accepting disrespect, and excusing behaviors you once would have never tolerated. And that's the danger of giving up even a little of your self-respect. It rarely stops there. I remember a relationship where at first everything seemed normal, but then small criticisms started creeping in. You're too sensitive. You're always overthinking. Maybe you're just not good enough for that job. At first, I let it slide. I avoided conflict, told myself these were just passing comments. But over time, I started believing them. I let them get to me. I shrunk myself. I questioned every decision, every word I spoke. One day, I looked in the mirror and realized I didn't recognize the person staring back. I had allowed someone else's opinion to dictate how I saw myself, and it hit me hard. I had lost the strong, confident version of myself. My self-respect had slipped right out from under me. Reclaiming my self-respect was one of the most powerful but also one of the hardest things I've ever done. Standing up for yourself, especially when you've been letting others take advantage, is uncomfortable, even painful. People will accuse you of changing, being difficult, acting selfish. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Most people are comfortable with you, as long as you don't make them uncomfortable. The second you start setting boundaries, refusing to accept disrespect, and making it clear that you won't compromise your values, you become a threat to the comfort zone they've enjoyed at your expense. Let's be real. Self-respect doesn't mean you're unkind or unwilling to compromise. It means you're willing to walk away from situations, people, and even jobs that require you to betray yourself. And yes, that's controversial. Society loves to romanticize self-sacrifice, to glorify bending over backward to make everyone else happy. But if making others happy requires you to betray yourself, it's not selflessness, it's self-sabotage. The moment I made the decision to put my self-respect first, everything changed. I started feeling stronger, more grounded, more in control of my life. Sure, some relationships fell apart, but looking back, those were the very ones that had been holding me down. When I let go of people who didn't respect me, I made room for those who did. And I realized something powerful. Self-respect isn't just a choice. It's a commitment to myself, a vow to protect my peace, confidence, and sense of worth. Here's the real, deep message. Respect yourself enough to walk away from anyone who doesn't respect you. Stop justifying disrespect or bad behavior just because you understand where someone is coming from. Compassion is one thing. Allowing someone to treat you like a doormat is something entirely different. There's a reason why Stoicism emphasizes the importance of self-mastery and integrity. If you lose yourself in someone else's expectations, you're letting them control you in ways they have no right to. In the end, the people who truly matter will respect the boundaries you set and appreciate the strength it takes to stand up for yourself. Those who don't, let them go. You owe it to yourself to hold on to that sense of self-respect, no matter what others think. Because here's the harsh truth. Once self-respect is gone, everything else, confidence, dignity, purpose, begins to crumble along with it. So the next time someone asks you to compromise your self-respect, remember this: no relationship, job, or friendship is worth sacrificing the core of who you are. Stand your ground, and let the people who can't handle it reveal themselves to your dreams. Your dreams aren't just some nice-to-have add-ons in life. They're what make you wake up with purpose. They bring meaning to everything you do. Yet, it's shocking how often people will ask, or even expect, you to put them aside. They'll say things like, "That's a great idea, but don't you think it's time to be realistic? That dream is fine for now, but when are you going to grow up?" It's as if dreams are only acceptable if they're tiny, if they're reasonable enough to fit into someone else's box. But let's be real. Dreams aren't meant to fit in boxes. They're meant to break them. I remember the first time I told someone about a huge dream of mine. They looked at me like I just said I was planning a trip to Mars. Then came that one word: ambitious. That word stuck with me. It wasn't encouragement. It was a polite way of saying, "That's way out of your league." I almost let it get to me. I started thinking, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm being unrealistic. But here's the thing. The people who tell you to let go of your dreams aren't the ones who will live with the regret if you give them up. That regret, it'll sit with you. Because dreams aren't just goals. They're pieces of you, your passions, your vision of what your future could be. Sacrificing a dream for someone else's comfort or approval is like dimming your own light because it's too bright for others. And if you do that long enough, you risk losing that spark entirely. People will try to make you feel like pursuing your dreams is selfish, that it means you're ignoring responsibilities or failing to give back. But here's a thought. What if the most responsible thing you could do is chase those dreams? What if by going after what you love, you inspire others to do the same? What if you create something that genuinely changes lives? A little jovial honesty here. Think about how many people have ditched their dreams only to end up middle-aged, grumbling about the good old days, wishing they'd had the courage to try. They'll tell you they had reasons, of course: a stable job, a family, practical matters, and sure, those are fair considerations, but they're not life sentences. Because if you can't weave your dreams into your life, you risk living a life that doesn't feel like it belongs to you. Look, I'm not saying you need to quit everything and sail around the world, unless that's your dream, in which case, set sail. But if your dream is quietly sitting on the back burner, just simmering away while life passes you by, ask yourself why. Who told you it had to wait? Because if you're not going to prioritize your dreams, who will? At the end of the day, dreams are part of what makes us feel alive. When you pursue them, no matter how crazy they seem, you're not just chasing some fantasy. You're building a life that actually aligns with who you really are. So next time someone says, "That's unrealistic," give them a smile and say, "Maybe it is, for you." Keep your dreams alive. 3. Your time. It's the one thing you can never get back. And yet, How often do we give it away like it's just lying around like spare change? Let's face it, everyone and everything wants a slice of your time. Friends, family, work. That random person who just needs a favor, just this once. But here's the truth. Your time is precious. Once it's gone, it's gone. So why do we treat it like an endless resource? I used to be that person who said yes to almost everything. Someone needed help moving? Sure, I've got a few hours. Extra project at work no one wanted to touch? Count me in. But after a while, I noticed something. I was exhausted, mentally drained, and worst of all, I felt like I wasn't really doing anything that mattered to me. My days were full, but with things that felt, frankly, meaningless. And the people I was saying yes to, they were rarely around when I needed a hand myself. People often expect you to be there whenever they need something. But how many of them are actually there when you need them? It's like there's this unspoken rule. Your time is up for grabs, but theirs? Untouchable. Now don't get me wrong, I'm all for being generous and helping out when you can. But if you're constantly giving away your time to everyone else, when your own priorities go unattended, who's left holding the bag? That's right, it's you. And chances are, you'll be the only one regretting it. One of the best lessons I've learned: protecting your time doesn't make you selfish. It makes you smart. If someone really values you, they'll respect your boundaries when you say, "Hey, I'd love to help, but I've got my own stuff to focus on right now." And if they don't respect that, then maybe they're not as invested in you as they are in what you can do for them. That's a hard pill to swallow, but it's also one of the most liberating realizations you can have. Now let's be clear. I'm not saying to ignore people or abandon everyone who needs you, but not every invitation, every request, every favor deserves a yes. If you're always pouring your energy into other people's plans, who's filling up your tank? You only have 24 hours in a day. And if most of it is spent on other people's agendas, you'll find yourself with barely any time to woo that hobby you've been meaning to try, still on the back burner, that life you wanted to build, still on pause, indefinitely. Here's a controversial thought. Being a little selfish with your time? One of the best things you can do for your relationships. Because when you prioritize what genuinely matters to you, you're not just happier, you're more present, more energized. When you're fulfilled, you're not constantly drained or resentful, silently thinking, "There goes another Saturday lost to someone else's to-do list." Instead, you're able to show up fully because you're not running on empty. So take a moment to think about where your time goes. Do you spend it on things that actually bring you joy and fulfillment? Or are you giving it away like free samples at a supermarket, hoping for someone's approval, chasing gratitude, just trying to avoid a little guilt? Remember, you're not an all-you-can-eat buffet of free time for others to feast on. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to guard your schedule fiercely. And you're definitely allowed to put yourself first sometimes. Because here's the bottom line. Time is the most valuable currency you have. Spend it wisely. When you look back on your life, you won't remember the small favors or the endless meetings that added no value to your day. You'll remember the moments that mattered, the ones spent doing something you loved, with the people who respected your time as much as you did. So protect your time like the treasure it is. Because once it's spent, there's no getting it back. 4. Your mental health. Your mental health is the foundation of everything else in your life. Yet, it's often the first thing we let slide. You wouldn't run your car on an empty tank and expect it to take you miles. Yet, we somehow expect our minds to push through burnout, endless stress, and sleepless nights without missing a beat. But here's a hard truth. Without your mental health, nothing else matters. No amount of success, approval, or money can make up for a mind that's exhausted and a heart that's heavy. I'll be real, I learned this the hard way. There was a time I thought pushing through was the way to handle everything. Too much work? Stay up all night? Feeling like you're on the edge? Just keep going. I kept piling on responsibilities, taking on more than I could handle, saying yes to people who, let's be honest, probably didn't care about my well-being as much as I assumed. At first, I convinced myself I was handling it, but it didn't take long for the cracks to show. I started feeling burnt out, losing interest in things that used to excite me, waking up each morning feeling like I'd already run a marathon. Then, one day, a friend looked at me and said, "You don't seem like yourself." And you know what? They were right. I had become so worn down and stressed out that I was a shadow of my usual self. That was the wake-up call I needed to start taking my mental health seriously. Here's the thing about mental health. It's not something you earn by toughing things out. You don't have to hit rock bottom before you're allowed to prioritize it. Yet, so many people treat it as if it's something you only deal with when you can't hide the struggle anymore. But ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It only makes things worse. Think of it like ignoring a warning light in your car. Sure, you can pretend it's not there for a while, but eventually, things break down. People may try to tell you that taking time for yourself, saying no to added pressure, even just unplugging for a day, is selfish or unnecessary. But here's the truth. They're not living in your mind, and they're not the ones dealing with the consequences when you push yourself past your limits. Mental health boundaries aren't about being lazy or avoiding hard work. They're about preserving the one thing you need most, your peace of mind. We live in a culture that celebrates the grind, that glorifies always being on, like you're somehow weak if you need a break. But let's be honest, there's nothing glamorous about waking up every day with anxiety, going to bed burnout, living in a cycle that leaves you too exhausted to enjoy anything you're actually working for. There's a time to hustle, sure, but there's also a time to rest. And rest isn't weakness, it's essential. You wouldn't run on an empty battery forever, so don't expect your mind to either. If someone tries to guilt trip you for prioritizing your mental health, take a step back. And remember, you are not here to sacrifice your well-being for someone else's comfort. Set boundaries. Take a day off when you need it. And don't feel like you have to explain yourself, because the people who care about you will understand. And those who don't, they're not worth that kind of energy. Putting yourself first isn't selfish, it's survival. And in the end, your mental health isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. Take it from someone who tried to do it all and paid the PR. Because when you protect your peace, everything else, it starts to feel a little brighter. 5. Your boundaries. Boundaries aren't just invisible lines. They're declarations of self-respect and sanity. Yet, how often do we let them slip just to keep others comfortable? Sacrificing your boundaries might keep the peace for a little while, but in the long run, it chips away at your sense of self, leaving you feeling used, drained, and resentful. Boundaries exist for a reason. They protect what matters to you, and ignoring them, it's like giving away parts of yourself, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. Let me tell you. I used to be the yes person. Someone needed a favor. Yes. Extra work project. Yes. Friend needs a ride across town at midnight. Sure thing. I thought saying yes was a form of loyalty, that it proved I was reliable and caring. But over time, I started noticing a pattern. The more I gave, the more people expected. And soon enough, my boundaries were so blurred, I barely remembered where I ended, and others began. One day, I hit a breaking point. I had agreed to yet another favor. But the weight of everything I had taken on was crushing. I had nothing left to give. And yet, here I was, giving anyway. That was my wake-up call. Either I respect my boundaries, or I keep living life at everyone else's mercy. Here's the truth. Boundaries might sound like restrictions to some, but in reality, they're freedom. Freedom from constant pressure. Freedom to rest. Freedom to spend your energy on things that truly matter. Because the right people, the ones who genuinely value you, will respect your boundaries. But there will always be people who test them. People who think they're entitled to every piece of you. And those people, they'll use every inch you give, taking more and more until you finally say, enough. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're shutting people out. It means you're letting the right people in. It's about creating space for what truly matters, so you can give your best without feeling drained or resentful. People may call it selfish. They may say you've changed. But let's be honest, they're usually the ones who benefited the most from your lack of boundaries in the first place. They were happiest when you put yourself last, and that's not a standard you should live by. Boundaries look different for everyone. Maybe it's deciding you're no longer answering work emails after hours. Maybe it's saying no to a friend who only reaches out when they need something. Maybe it's choosing not to engage in conversations that drain your energy, or stepping away from relationships that make you feel small. But whatever your boundaries look like, they deserve to be there. They deserve to be honored. People will test you. They'll push. They'll guilt trip. And they'll act like your boundaries are just obstacles for them to overcome. But here's the truth. People who don't respect your boundaries don't respect you. They respect what you do for them, the convenience you provide, the endless well of yes that you represent. Real respect isn't just about being polite or saying the right things. It's about honoring someone's limits, even when it doesn't benefit you. It's understanding that every relationship, every job, every commitment needs healthy boundaries to thrive. Over time, I've learned something important. The best relationships I have are with people who understand my boundaries, don't expect me to be on 24/7, don't take every no as a personal attack. They recognize that my time and energy are limited, and that's okay. They don't need constant access to me to feel valued. They don't rely on me for their happiness. And when you start setting boundaries, you'll notice something powerful. The people who truly value you, the real you, will respect them as well. Setting boundaries is hard. It requires courage, honesty, the willingness to sometimes disappoint others. But here's the thing. You're not here to be everything for everyone. You're here to be true to yourself, to live a life that respects your needs, your dreams, and your well-being. The people who genuinely care about you, they'll understand that, and they'll support you. The ones who don't, let them go. Protect your boundaries fiercely, because no one else will do it for you. You have the right to say no. Take up space. Guard your time and energy. It's not about building walls. It's about creating space for what matters. And in the end, when you honor your boundaries, you're not just protecting yourself, you're creating a life where you can truly thrive. 6. Your financial independence. Financial independence isn't just about money. It's about freedom, self-respect, and the ability to live life on your own terms. It's about knowing that you're not dependent on someone else's generosity or bound by someone else's rules. Yet, too often, people give up their financial independence without even realizing it, relying too much on a partner. B. That hobby you've been meaning to try, still on the back burner, that life you wanted to build, still on pause, indefinitely. Here's a controversial thought. Being a little selfish with your time, one of the best things you can do for your relationships. Because when you prioritize what genuinely matters to you, you're not just happier, you're more present, more energized. When you're fulfilled, you're not constantly drained or resentful, silently thinking, there goes another Saturday lost to someone else's to-do list. Instead, you're able to show up fully because you're not running on empty. So take a moment to think about where your time goes. Do you spend it on things that actually bring you joy and fulfillment? Or are you giving it away like free samples at a supermarket, hoping for someone's approval, chasing gratitude, just trying to avoid a little guilt? Remember, you're not an all-you-can-eat buffet of free time for others to feast on. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to guard your schedule fiercely. And you're definitely allowed to put yourself first sometimes. Because here's the bottom line. Time is the most valuable currency you have. Spend it wisely. When you look back on your life, you won't remember the small favors or the endless meetings that added no value to your day. You'll remember the moments that mattered, the ones spent doing something you loved, with the people who respected your time as much as you did. So protect your time like the treasure it is. Because once it's spent, there's no getting it back. 4. Your mental health. Your mental health is the foundation of everything else in your life. Yet, it's often the first thing we let slide. You wouldn't run your car on an empty tank and expect it to take you miles. Yet, we somehow expect our minds to push through burnout, endless stress, and sleepless nights without missing a beat. But here's a hard truth. Without your mental health, nothing else matters. No amount of success, approval, or money can make up for a mind that's exhausted and a heart that's heavy. I'll be real, I learned this the hard way. There was a time I thought pushing through was the way to handle everything. Too much work? Stay up all night? Feeling like you're on the edge? Just keep going. I kept piling on responsibilities, taking on more than I could handle, saying yes to people who, let's be honest, probably didn't care about my well-being as much as I assumed. At first, I convinced myself I was handling it, but it didn't take long for the cracks to show. I started feeling burnt out, losing interest in things that used to excite me, waking up each morning feeling like I'd already run a marathon. Then, one day, a friend looked at me and said, "You don't seem like yourself." And you know what? They were right. I had become so worn down and stressed out that I was a shadow of my usual self. That was the wake-up call I needed to start taking my mental health seriously. Here's the thing about mental health. It's not something you earn by toughing things out. You don't have to hit rock bottom before you're allowed to prioritize it. Yet, so many people treat it as if it's something you only deal with when you can't hide the struggle anymore. But ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It only makes things worse. Think of it like ignoring a warning light in your car. Sure, you can pretend it's not there for a while, but eventually, things break down. People may try to tell you that taking time for yourself, saying no to added pressure, even just unplugging for a day, is selfish or unnecessary. But here's the truth. They're not living in your mind, and they're not the ones dealing with the consequences when you push yourself past your limits. Mental health boundaries aren't about being lazy or avoiding hard work. They're about preserving the one thing you need most, your peace of mind. We live in a culture that celebrates the grind, that glorifies always being on, like you're somehow weak if you need a break. But let's be honest, there's nothing glamorous about waking up every day with anxiety, going to bed burnout, living in a cycle that leaves you too exhausted to enjoy anything you're actually working for. There's a time to hustle, sure, but there's also a time to rest. And rest isn't weakness, it's essential. You wouldn't run on an empty battery forever, so don't expect your mind to either. If someone tries to guilt trip you for prioritizing your mental health, take a step back. And remember, you are not here to sacrifice your well-being for someone else's comfort. Set boundaries. Take a day off when you need it. And don't feel like you have to explain yourself, because the people who care about you will understand. And those who don't, they're not worth that kind of energy. Putting yourself first isn't selfish, it's survival. And in the end, your mental health isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. Take it from someone who tried to do it all and paid the PR. Sacrificing financial independence can trap you in a cycle of dependency and limit your ability to make your own choices. Let me share something personal. Early on, I thought it didn't matter if I had complete control over my finances, as long as I was comfortable. I believed that as long as I had a partner or family support, I didn't have to worry too much. But over time, I started noticing something. The small ways that lack of financial independence tied me down. Decisions I should have been making for myself suddenly required someone else's approval. I found myself hesitant to pursue things I wanted, even if I had the money, because I wasn't fully in control. And honestly, it was humiliating to realize I didn't have complete autonomy. Financial independence isn't about selfishness or about never relying on others. It's about freedom. The freedom to make choices that align with your goals, values, and dreams. Without asking anyone for permission, when you have control over your finances, you're less likely to compromise on things that matter to you. You're less likely to stay in toxic situations. You're less likely to make sacrifices that go against your values, just because you feel financially trapped. It's not uncommon to see people give up their financial independence in relationships, thinking that pooling everything together and becoming completely financially reliant on each other is the right move. Sharing finances in a relationship can be a sign of trust. And while that can be part of a healthy partnership, losing your financial autonomy, that's a different story. Because when one person has all the financial control, it creates an imbalance of power. Suddenly, they dictate major decisions: where you live, what you prioritize, even what dreams you can and can't pursue. When you rely on someone else financially, even if they have the best intentions, you're putting your freedom in their hands. Now, think about how many people stay in jobs they hate, careers that don't fulfill them, situations that drain them. Why? Because they're afraid of losing financial stability. They may dream of switching paths, starting a business, taking a break to pursue something meaningful. But the fear of losing a paycheck, it keeps them locked in place. This is why financial independence is so crucial. It gives you the ability to walk away from situations that don't serve you without feeling like you're risking everything. Financial independence doesn't mean you have to be wealthy. It means you have control. It's about budgeting, saving, making intentional choices that align with your goals. It's about building a foundation so that if something goes wrong, whether in a relationship, a job, or any other area, you have the means to take care of yourself. When you have that independence, you're able to focus on what truly matters to you, without the looming worry of financial insecurity. Because here's one of the greatest lessons I've learned. When you have financial independence, people can't manipulate or control you as easily. You have the power to set boundaries. You have the power to say no when something doesn't feel right. You have the power to pursue the path that fulfills you most. You don't have to tolerate toxic relationships, stay in compromising situations, give up your dreams just because you're financially tied to them. Of course, achieving financial independence takes time, discipline, smart money management. It means learning to budget, saying no to unnecessary expenses, and investing in yourself in ways that build stability. But each step toward that goal gives you a bit more freedom, a bit more autonomy, and it's worth every sacrifice, because ultimately, it allows you to be the architect of your own life. Don't let anyone convince you that giving up your financial independence is a small price to pay for love, loyalty, or comfort. Because the reality is, when you sacrifice your financial autonomy, you're often giving up more than just money. You're sacrificing your freedom. You're sacrificing your ability to make decisions. You're sacrificing your sense of self-reliance. Financial independence is about respecting yourself enough to ensure that you can stand on your own, come what may. 7. Your passion. Your passion is the fire that lights you up from within, the thing that makes time disappear, that pulls you in so deeply you forget the rest of the world. It's that one thing that makes you feel alive. And yet, in a world that prioritizes practicality and expectations, people quickly abandon their passions. They write them off as childish dreams, unrealistic goals, not worth the effort, and honestly, that's one of the saddest sacrifices we can make. Here's the thing. Passion is fuel. It's the energy that drives you, the excitement that makes you stay up late, keep learning, push yourself beyond what's expected. Without it, life becomes mechanical, a series of tasks and obligations, a routine. We hear it all the time. I used to be into that, but then life got in the way. I just don't have time for it anymore. That's the quiet surrender of a part of ourselves. And once it's gone, it's incredibly hard to reclaim. When I was younger, I had a passion that completely absorbed me. Writing stories. I would write for hours, creating worlds, characters, and plots that filled my imagination. But then came the real world, with its demands, its expectations of what a good career should look like. And I gradually told myself, I don't have time for this. Writing was fun, sure, but it wasn't important. I convinced myself I could live without it, focusing instead on things that were more useful. Over time, though, I felt a growing emptiness, like something crucial was missing. I tried filling it with other hobbies, but nothing quite matched the spark writing gave me. Eventually, I realized giving up on my passion wasn't just sacrificing a hobby, it was denying a fundamental part of who I am. So, I made the time. Even if it was just a few hours a week, I started writing again. And the difference it made in my life? Incredible. That little spark, That feeling of connection to something I genuinely loved, it bled into every other area of my life, giving me new energy and excitement even in my practical pursuits. This is what so many of us forget. Passion isn't something extra. It's not frivolous. It's essential. When you give up on your passion, you lose the very thing that makes life vibrant. And no matter how many responsibilities we have, no matter how many obligations we feel tied to, there's always room. There must be room. Because without passion, we're simply existing, not truly living. Here's where things get real. People might say, passion doesn't pay the bills. It's just a hobby. Focus on what matters. But the truth is, your passion does matter. Maybe more than anything else, because it's what keeps you curious, resilient, alive. Giving up on it for the sake of practicality or pleasing others, that's a mistake that will haunt you over time. Because at the end of the day, no job, no amount of money, no practical pursuit will replace the fulfillment that comes from following what sets your soul on fire. And here's the best part. Passion is contagious. When you pursue what you love, others notice. You become more vibrant, more engaging, more inspiring. People are naturally drawn to those who are lit up by life. When you chase your passion, you inspire others to dig deep, to remember their own dreams, to step away from the monotonous grind and explore what they truly love. That ripple effect of someone embracing what makes them feel alive can be a profound influence on the world. Of course, pursuing passion takes courage. It's not always easy, especially when you feel like you should be doing something more conventional. Maybe you even have people around you who scoff at your interests, dismiss your passion as a waste of time. But here's the hard truth. Those people aren't living your life. They don't experience the emptiness you feel when you deny yourself something that truly matters. Only you know what lights you up, what gives you purpose, what makes life worth living. And only you can choose to hold on to that. Sometimes that means saying no to obligations that drain you, stepping back from people who don't understand, sacrificing short-term comfort for long-term joy. But if you're willing to protect your passion, to let it thrive despite the noise, you'll find a deep sense of fulfillment that no external validation can replace. Passion is a lifelong companion, and it's worth every ounce of effort to keep it alive. So don't let anyone convince you that passion is optional. Don't fall into the trap of believing, "I'll get back to it someday." Start now, even if it's in small doses, even if it's just a few minutes each day. Whatever it is, art, music, sports, storytelling, or something else entirely, it deserves a place in your life, because passion, more than anything else, makes life meaningful. And that's something you should never sacrifice. And there you have it, the things you should never sacrifice for anyone. These are the things that define us, that give our lives meaning, that keep us grounded in who we are. It's easy to lose sight of them in a world that constantly pushes us to compromise, to fit into someone else's expectations. But remember, your self-respect, dreams, boundaries, and passions are non-negotiable. They are your foundation, fuel, and the very essence of what makes life worth living. So as you go forward, protect these parts of yourself fiercely. Stand firm in who you are, honor what matters most, and never let anyone convince you to give up what's truly important. Life is too short to live by someone else's rules. Own your values, prioritize what fuels you, and make choices that align with the person you want to become. Thank you for watching and spending tea. Needs it. And remember, You deserve to live a life true to yourself. Hold on to that, because it's one of the most powerful things you can do. See you in the next one.